mention of fire. It doesn't tell us how they died. But the language it uses of jealousy and envy, that's language that people usually use for kind of intercommunal strife. So one scholar has said that probably what happened is that the author of this story thinks that Peter and Paul were killed because other Christians in Rome don't like them. And so they kind of engineer their death. That's our first reference. Quite far away from what you might hear in church. Our next earliest source is going to be this late 2nd century account of the death of Peter, the Acts of Peter. And in this story, Peter ends up being crucified upside down. He asks to be crucified upside down because it's a symbol of how things in the world are not as they seem and how good has been set on its head. And Peter gives this long speech that is, for most Christians today, would be considered heresy. Because the authors of this story subscribed to religious beliefs that are now known as Gnostic, which is now seen as the grand arch heresy in early Christianity. And so it takes a long time. It takes about 400 years before we get to the first Christian story that sounds even slightly like what you would hear in church, which is that Peter asked to be crucified upside down out of humility because he didn't feel he was worthy to die like Jesus, which is what you would hear in church today. And as a historian, I want to say that story is clearly much later. The earliest version of being crucified upside down is actually about a theological point that no Christians believe in anymore, and a text that no Christians would put in their Bible because they do not subscribe to these beliefs. And our earliest nugget of information about the death of Peter tells us nothing about the circumstances of his death. And if it tells us anything, it's